I'm Mike,
And I'm Amber. Welcome to the Covenant Chronicles,
where we tell you the truth about relationships.
giving you the tools to build the foundation you always needed. Welcome back to the Covenant Chronicles.
We're back again. Hello.
That was a little better.
A little better? All right.
I mean, we still got to do more than that, but, it's fine. They probably get tired of hearing us talk about this every time we start a podcast.
They'll get over it.
It's fine. Anywho, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about power and control.
In
I guess would be the overall or overarching category. But I wanted to talk about it in the sense because we had gone through some things, we've talked about before that we kind of make a list of things that we want to talk about. And sometimes we go back and add more on to that or explain things in a slightly different way. But there's also some that we just haven't got to yet. And this one's kind of a culmination of some stuff we've talked about before. But the irony in this is I think it resonated because we had an opportunity to talk to some folks today actually about this in some stuff that we were working through and mentoring people on and in a relationship. And it got me thinking about this because we see it so often. I would say inside of relationships, and you and I have experienced a level of this as well. And that is essentially where the power and control dynamics and as it relates to manipulation inside of the relationship. And what I mean by this is, the word manipulation and, oh, they were a manipulator, they're a manipulative person, and all of this is thrown out so much, right? It's thrown out inside of relationships when people are trying to like make a point. It's thrown out so often when you have an ex-partner, ex-spouse, ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, right?
Yeah, everyone's a manipulator.
The funny part about that comment though is it's true, right? And there's a level of manipulation that we all have, and it happens when we go into this like survival mode, if you will. And I wanted to talk about this because humans all have a self-preservation default setting in them, right? Let's take pasts, let's take emotions, let's take memories, let's take experiences all out of it for just a second. And at the root of being a human being, there is a level of self-preservation that is present in all of us, right?
Yeah.
The level and the lengths that we go to vary by person, but there is a level of that in all of us. And what's so interesting about this is this scenario in which we find or what I've seen patterns in relationships that we have or that I've been in. I'm sure that you would agree with this as well. And, relationships that we've examined and seen from either friends, people we've mentored, people that we've been able to talk with, all of this stuff is this theme in which when there is a power struggle, right? And we can talk another time potentially about the depths of how the power struggle is created and all that sort of stuff. But when there's a level of manipulation in all of us, right? And we love to deflect and say, hey, that person's manipulating, this is manipulative, this, that, and the other. But the truth is, both of us, or both parties, I should say, inside of a relationship will do that to a certain level when they are trying to get their point across or when they're in disagreement, right? And it's so interesting because you'll see where somebody will put up walls around certain situations because they're like, well, this person's trying to do this, while simultaneously there's a level of them doing it themselves, right? And I think this is important to talk about because I we want to make this scenario where, like, manipulation's bad and they're a bad person because of it and this, that, and the other, when in reality, I'm not justifying it, and I'm not saying, "Hey, you should be okay to do this." But what I am saying is there's a level of this in all of us that occurs inside of relationships, and when we can acknowledge this within ourselves or acknowledge that, hey, when I'm like we've talked about before with the internal conversation, you change that internal conversation and you're choosing to um, see your partner differently by changing your conversation about them. What happens is you can acknowledge that, well, maybe this manipulation wasn't always, which it can be, but it's not always an attack on you so much as they went into a default self-preservation mode, and how differently things can flow when we look at things from that perspective.
Yeah, I was gonna read the actual, like, definition of manipulation, which is the act of controlling, managing, or influencing people, situations, or objects, often in a skillful, underhanded, or dishonest manner for personal gain. It involves exploiting emotions or altering facts to steer behavior, or the physical handling of items with precision. So, I think in kind of what you're saying, like, I think everyone does have a level of manipulation. Um, and sometimes, like you said, it's not even that we necessarily know we're doing it or do it on purpose, but it still often happens because we're trying to protect ourselves
Mhm.
or, um, trying to because oftentimes in, fights, we're trying to win, right? So part of, winning your argument is trying to control the situation, trying to manage what's happening,
Mhm.
trying to win the argument. So a lot of times, really, truthfully, we are all manipulating the situation, and it might not be some grand thing. Um, but it can just be little things that are said that is gonna hurt the other person or, just changing the fact a tiny bit to make it sound better for yourself.
Mhm.
Those little things.
Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to talk about this because I think that people have this stigma around manipulation, right? And there needs to be an understanding that this is not us justifying manipulation. This is not saying it's okay to manipulate your partner, right? Because it's not. But what I am saying and what we're trying to get across here is that there's a level of manipulation in all of us. When we hit the default self preservation mode, that comes out. And we don't always do it intentionally, right? We don't always do it with malintentions or bad intentions. We don't always do it to try and, create issues or, harm our partner or any of this, right? We don't, while I will say sometimes it is us just saying, okay, I have to win at all costs, right?
Yeah.
And in those times, we really need to examine that and take that out of it. And we've done other podcasts and talked about the win-lose mindset, right? But you also have to understand that about yourself and about your partner, that there will be times in which you do things or they do things and they don't even necessarily realize they've done it. And in their mind, they may feel justified in their actions, right?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean they're correct. That doesn't mean they're okay. But I think we spend so much time trying to fight like that they're wrong without even taking a step back to say, okay, maybe this was unintentional. And what is our actual goal or where's the outcome? What is the result that we want from this discussion?
Yeah.
Right. And then what happens is we don't take that into account. And then we get stuck in this place of like, you're wrong, I'm right. You're doing this, you're doing bad things, you're harming me, right? And we get trapped in this mindset as opposed to just understanding that sometimes you're both human. And just like you don't understand or you're trying to figure out things, they are too, right? And we
Mhm.
take these things so personal sometimes that it can be hard for us to move forward because we allow it to affect us. We allow it to hurt us. And it's okay to feel that. But the challenge is when we start having these internal conversations and telling ourselves these things over and over and about our partner and making them a bad person because, well, they manipulated us, right? When in reality, it could have just been the situation put them in a place of self-preservation, and this trigger happened subconsciously. Right.
Well, and I was just thinking too while you were talking about this. We've talked about this before. Like sometimes whenever we get into an argument with each other, like my fight or flight will switch on
Mhm.
and my brain almost just shuts off.
Mhm.
And then I struggle with like remembering everything that was said or, remembering exact details of what was happening type of thing. And, there has been times in our arguments where you're like, "That's not what happened," or "That's not whatever," and I remember it like, differently because my brain essentially just shut off, and it's not that I, was trying to manipulate the situation or make it a certain way, but, like, that's just how my brain saw it
Mhm.
because my brain turned off, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how often that actually happens in most interactions or, fights that people are having. I don't know how, like, common that is for men, like, if it happens as much with men as it does. I mean, maybe it doesn't happen with all women, but I can say, like, maybe it's just from my past, but, that's when I get in heated things, my fight
Mhm.
or flight just switches on, and that's what happens in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it doesn't happen as often, for men per se. Um, but I think it's more of an emotional thing where the emotions actually cloud that part, but I mean, men certainly can, especially when we get upset, not actually see or remember things clearly, right? And I think that it created a struggle for us in certain parts of our relationship, like you said, where we've had talks. And sometimes I've gotten frustrated because I'm like, What do you mean? Like, you said this." And, you're like, "No, I didn't," right? And I take this as, like, manipulation of you trying to, like, manipulate the situation, right? But in reality, like you said, your brain shuts off and you genuinely might not remember or have a recollection, right? And I'm like, it comes back to this point of, "Okay, well, what point am I even trying to prove?" Right? Like, what like, talking about it and saying, "Hey, we had a misunderstanding," or, "This part of it, I know maybe you don't remember, but you said this, which then affected me in this way, and this is how it made me feel, which is why I did this," having maybe a being able to walk through the situation with your partner is important, especially when you're after the fact and you're coming from a calm place and you guys can actively have a healthy discussion about, hey, this is, what happened. But it comes back to that point of how often do we just say, oh, well, they're manipulating me, they're da 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 da. And then you're like arguing and you're having this internal conversation of like, they're almost like a villain in your story because they're trying to attack you and they're trying to do this, right? When in reality, that's maybe not the case. Like you said, when you talked about your brain shutting down, right? Okay, maybe you didn't remember saying this. Does it really affect the whole situation? Does it really, like, drastically change things, right? Or am I just trying to prove a point because of my own feelings, right? And not to say, "Hey, my feelings aren't important," because both parties' feelings are important, And it's important that we both take that into account, but at the end of the day, is it drastically going to, affect things in some crazy manner, whether I prove my point that you forgot this or not? And the reality is it's not, right? But we can get trapped in very easily in a argument cycle of trying to prove a point, right? And you're defensive because you genuinely don't remember because your brain shut off. And I'm like, no, you said this, right? And then I'm getting frustrated because now I think you're denying or you're trying to manipulate me or gaslight me or whatever, right? And it's like it's the dumbest thing ever. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's different if you're falling in this trap where your partner is consistently trying to harm you and manipulate you to control you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a very real thing that people go through. But I would say, in our experience, more often than not, that's not necessarily the case, right? And
Yeah.
the challenge becomes is we aren't willing to step out of our own way and acknowledge, hey, sometimes I manipulate. I may not even realize I do it.
Mhm.
Sometimes they manipulate. They may not even realize they do it, but it comes from a place of self preservation. And when you can just have enough understanding and grace for yourself and your partner, right? Because that's important grace for you and grace for them
Yeah.
to acknowledge that and say, well, w- what is the result we want here? And is the argument we're having right now actually gonna change anything, right? And here's the reality. Does your partner truly manipulate you nonstop, or is that the story you're telling yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because more often than not, it's the story you're telling yourself, and your fights and your arguments go so extreme that there's a level of manipulation on both sides, and you just want to point out their side of the fence, right?
I think it's also just a misunderstanding of feelings, right? Like, you're feeling a certain way. So instead of clearly communicating exactly what you mean, you start saying stuff that sounds like it might be manipulating, but,
Mm,
it's not actually manipulating. And I think that happens a lot. And
yeah.
even seeing it like play out in the way that people don't understand each other or, fight over an issue that you're like, but there's a deeper meaning behind what they're trying to say or what they're trying to do. You think that it's manipulation, but it's not, like they're just struggling because, they something was mentioned and it felt like, abandonment to them. So now they're trying to, say something else or, person is trying to communicate that they just don't feel safe, but it's coming out as something else, And so I think we just end up, I think a lot of times interpreting manipulation as people just trying to express their underneath feelings that they're not doing a great job of expressing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, obviously, a lot of it comes back to the communication piece, right? And the communication of understanding where, um, or the ability to actually communicate in a way that the other partner receives, right? But eh, like you said, there's this ability, or I guess inability, to necessarily see what is meant and where they come from. And how often I wanted to specifically attack this, this piece because um we struggle, or we talk about a lot on the podcast, with labels and putting labels on things, right? Because that is what society loves to do, right? And like the Romans 12:2, that is the core of most of what we do here. That is the core of, what I do on the business and leadership side, right? And it's that, don't be conformed by this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? And The reality of the situation is that the world is going to put all kinds of labels on everything that we do. And this is one of those things where we allow labels to affect our internal conversation and to destroy that conversation, right? And this is exactly one of those examples. We allow this label of manipulation, right? Which is some term that some psychologist invented,
Mhm.
right? To stick a label on something, and then it gets overused by society, and then we use that, or we allow that overuse of the label in our own lives to then just destroy our internal conversation, right? And just destroy who our partner is in our own mind, right? And I use this word destroy because it is the severity of it. I want that to hit. I want that to land, and I want people to understand and hear what I'm saying here, right?
Mhm.
Our internal conversation about our partner will 100%, and it's not just, hey, it changes your relationship. Your internal conversation about your partner will 100% destroy who they are in your own mind,
Yeah.
right? And in many ways can affect your environment and them as well, because it all feeds off, or it all, pours outwardly towards them.
Yeah.
And so when we put this label, right, of them manipulating, them being a manipulator, this, that, and the other, right?
Mhm.
And the truth of the matter is we all have a little bit of that in us. And the other truth is that even if they are truly a manipulative person, it is a learned behavior, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to tolerate it. They are a person that is consistently manipulating you on a regular basis, right? But what that looks like is emotional abuse, in the sense that they have you so strung all over the place, you don't even know who you are,
Yeah.
right? That is very different than you not knowing who you are to begin with and not having proper boundaries in place. And they exhibit some form of manipulation when you guys fight or argue that you also exhibit in a different manner.
Mhm.
And they're a manipulator, right? Those are two very different things. And the reality is most relationships fall into the latter of those two. And when we can stop labeling it as this, my partner's trying to attack me, is basically what we're saying when we say they're manipulating, right?
Yeah.
And we can look at it through a different lens of they're in self-preservation mode. Then we can reverse engineer that and say, why are they in this mode? Why are they here? What's making them feel this way? What's putting them in this place? Right? And understand that we have a part in that.
Mhm.
Okay. And it very well might come from their past. It very well might come from something they've been through. It very well might be stuff programming within them and conversations and programs that they're running in their head. But they're in this place at this moment with us because something we had a part in.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't mean it's all on you, but you have had a part in it. You can't fix them. You can't convince them. You can't change them by telling them or by arguing with them or trying to prove your point or trying to overpower them.
Mhm.
But what you can do is you very much can examine it for yourself, change it for yourself, and figure out what part you had in this, and then work on, okay, the part that you had, where did that come, right? And attacking the root of that within yourself, because that's what makes the change. And when we talk about these internal conversations, the conversations we have with ourselves, words are important, right?
Mhm.
They matter. The things we say, right? It matters. And so when we do that, right, power of life and death are in the tongue, right? And so when we say these things, we start putting these labels, and we could probably do an episode on each individual label, right? And we probably will at some point. But at the end of the day, what you need to take home and understand about this is that the label is the poison on your tongue,
Mhm.
right? It's the poison that you're spewing that's tainting and twisting your mind,
Yeah.
right? Hey, this person exhibited a manipulative behavior because they're in fight or flight, because they're in self preservation. Keep in mind, the manipulative behavior is what it is, right? They may not be a manipulator. The manipulative behavior is the fruit, not the root of the tree, right? And so we try to make them this bad person because of the fruit without understanding, hey, why did this fruit get produced, right? And was it an actual attack on you, or was it self preservation that you took as an attack?
Yeah. That's good. My brain doesn't have much to add because I'm just processing all of that.
I know that's what I love about our podcast is more often than not we actually don't um actually, we don't ever really talk about the subjects. Like, we talk about them, but I think that's important, like, for people to understand is that when we talk about something or we bring it up on the podcast, it's not necessarily us searching and searching and searching, and then we go, Google, "Hey, what's the 100 top things to talk about on a podcast," right? These are all things that, like, we build a list for ourselves as we go through things, right? As we experience things inside of our relationship, as we have aha moments ourselves and talk about the aha moment, or as we're working with couples and we talk about, hey, this is because we like to debrief and decompress basically what we talked about and how we went through that,
Yeah.
because I think that's an important part of the improvement process, not only for us and our abilities but for them. So we do that afterwards, after we get done meeting, and we kind of decompress and run through everything. And sometimes those lead to, hey, this would be a really good thing to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's something we're chatting with our friends, and hey, more people need to understand this, right? And those moments are what we build our personal list off of.
Yeah.
And then it's, hey, what's resonating to us right now, right? And
Mhm.
it's more often than not something that we've seen, heard, talked about, or been through
Yeah.
within the last 24 to 72 hours,
Yeah.
right? And then that's what gets talked about,
Yeah.
because whether it's stuff that we go through, or whether it's stuff that we're talking through with people, or stuff we're just having casual conversation about, these are the real things that people go through, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we actually run through and deconstruct these topics, or construct these topics, however you want to look at it, live on the podcast. And it just happens to get recorded. And that's what, but the reality is that it's all done with the intention of impacting others, right? Like that's the goal here, is give people real stuff and connect with them on real things that we're going through, or seeing that they may be going through or experiencing, right? And being able to give them tools and resources and ways to navigate through that.
Yeah. That's the whole point and purpose of this. I think why we both felt called to create a podcast in the first place, just for that reason.
Yeah.
So,
With that being said,
yeah.
what are they going to do this week, the next few days? We always say this week, but then there's usually only 3 or 4 days between podcasts. So,
It's
uh,
true. It's more like weekdays versus weekends, but that's okay.
today, let's keep hammering the school community, because they need to do that. So they need to go to school, SKOOL.
Yeah.
You search Covenant Community. That is the Covenant Chronicles community on school.
Hmm.
It's Covenant Community. Go join it. It is free to create a school account. If you are not familiar with school, you need to get off most of the other social media junk that you are on. Go join school. There are tons of communities on there. Some are free, some are paid, some are a combination of both. But it is a much healthier overall place to be than on Facebook or Instagram or most of these other, social medias, depending on how you're using it, because it's all community based.
Yeah.
We have built a school specifically revolving around what we do here at the Covenant Chronicles. The free community gives you some great information, um, just right out of the gate. The posts in there, the questions we ask are meant to get you engaged, to keep you thinking, to keep you improving. And while the community is a hybrid where there is a free community, there's also paid tiers. The free side offers you a ton of stuff.
Mhm.
There's a year long, we talked about on the last podcast, there's a year long marital couples Bible study in there, uh, which has worksheets and will have you thinking about stuff. You will learn stuff about the Bible, about relationships, and about yourself that you never understood or knew before.
Yeah.
And I promise you, if you go through and do it with your spouse, you'll, or even by yourself, most of it is, I think all of it can be done by yourself if you're just trying to learn what a covenant is and what being a covenant partner is all about. You can do it by yourself too. And
Yeah.
it will completely change how you view marriage, how you view certain parts of the Bible, and how you view yourself.
For sure. And I went in there and played around with it yesterday. If you go to like Discover, I think, and you actually type in, you'll want to type in covenant community and will be like the first thing that pops up. But if you just do like covenant, then it's like a little bit down the page. If you were to just type in like relationships, we're like way down there. So the best way to actually find it is to type in covenant community. And the like picture for it is like a bride and a groom hiking up a hill. It's like an animated picture. Um, so if you find that one, that's our community. Go join it. And we hope to see you in there and to interact with you.
Absolutely. That's what you guys go do. That being said, we will catch you guys in a few days.
Yeah. Till next time.
Okay, bye.
Adios.